Hey everybody, I'm Jeremy Pope with the Closing Engine, and welcome to the Sales Call Overhaul. This is my, I don't know which side you're on, but one of these sides is my co-host, Jason Canigan, and the other side is our guest for today, Jeremy DeMerchant.
Hey.
Thanks for being with us today, Jeremy.
My pleasure.
We are pretty excited. We are getting back into the flow of doing the sales call recordings and going through your sales call recordings live on the air and giving feedback on those. We're going to be giving away our $1,100 sales call overhaul package. And so submit your calls and we'll go through those calls with our guest expert for the week. And we'll show you how to boost your close rate by 10 or 15% in your next couple of phone calls right there on the air. So submit your call to win. You can comment below. We'll give a link to how to submit your call to win. Next week, our guest is Dennis DeMori, who is a copywriter and a funnel builder kind of guy, and we're very excited to have him. Let us know who you want us to have on as a guest. We listen, and there's always somebody very cool that we don't know yet, and so we love meeting new folks and having them on. Jeremy, we're so pleased to have you today. And Jason, thanks for booking in.
You bet. So Jeremy S. DeMerchant, not to be confused with any other, is a sales strategist, the sales strategist. In fact, if the marketing is to be believed, he's a #1 best-selling author, international speaker, and founder of what's called the Permission to Sell Consulting Group. So
I love that name.
I know we're going to talk about that in a minute. So he believes the most powerful way to create a positive impact in people's lives is to give them the skills, the confidence, and the support to be able to influence positive change in themselves and then others. And he has obviously a passion for entrepreneurship, over 20 years in sales and 16 years in coaching and leadership roles in the corporate arena, and then moved over now and shares his results-driven passion for supporting entrepreneurs and sales professionals. So if you're looking to achieve a highest level of success through powerful conversations and sales strategies, then here's your guy, Jeremy. Thanks for being here. And why did you choose Permission to Sell as your brand name?
I was actually sitting in a dark room at a university that I had managed to create a short-term job for myself after I finished my marketing degree.
All my favorite stories start this way. Okay, awesome.
The dark room. And I was on a lunch break. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about the business that I wanted to create, and I was just randomly searching names. And the first domain that I actually purchased was Converting Conversations. And I thought, wow, that's kind of doesn't quite flow. And then out of nowhere, I just had this idea. And I thought, Permission to Sell. And it was there, and I bought it that second. Mm-hmm. There was no deep planning behind it. It was like, it just kind of it popped into my head, and it was available. So I just ran with it.
That's kind of like how Scott Haynes talks about the best copy is written quickly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like it.
Good deal. So what does it mean to you? What are the values that name encapsulates?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges that I've seen over the years in sales is people are really scared, right? And they're worried about rejection. They're worried about the perception that someone else will have of them after they try to present a sales opportunity or present a product or something. And the traditional salesperson, the vacuum cleaner salesperson or encyclopedia salesperson that jams their foot in the door has really given a bad name to salespeople. And in 2018, that just doesn't work anymore. So the process that I want people to focus on is, first, you need to give yourself permission. And secondly, you need to get permission from that client to move forward and make an offer, right? I'm not going to go and start pitching products at somebody without having a clue what they need.
Right. So that's the key. Do you view the sale as part of serving that client? That's kind of what it brings up to me. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, and if you look around, anything in your home or in your office, you got it because in some form it was sold to you. Whether it was an ad on the side of Facebook, or it was a conversation you had with somebody that you thought was an authority, like the last car you may have bought. you asked them some questions that you didn't know the answers to, and at some point you, maybe not in the card situation, but maybe you trusted this particular advisor to give you advice in an area that you weren't 100% comfortable in, and then made the decision based on their suggestions. So I think sales is really, I mean, Bob Berg said sales is finding out what somebody really does want and giving it to them, right? Or helping them get it.
Say that again.
Bob Berg's quote is, sales is really finding out what somebody does want and then helping them get it.
Yep.
And I think that's the big shift from the traditional sales, is it's, you know, you're not just flogging a product and, you know, treating it like spaghetti on the wall, seeing what'll stick. It's actually having a conversation, seeing what the need is. And then if you can help them get there, great. If you can't, then refer them to somebody else that can, right? This is no longer a silo game. You need to have a team or people you can refer to, right? Like, I know you guys do things that I don't do, so I'm happy to send people your way, right? So,
and even we have colleagues in this business that we refer to, and they refer to us because we don't. I mean, it's not a good fit for our culture, or it's not a good fit for their culture and things like that. I just got one of those today, and it was the collegiality there allows you all to be so relaxed about it, and to just, you can help your colleagues instead of thinking of everybody as a competitor, and you can help your customers so much better, because whether they're your customer or not, they're your network's customer, and just it gives you a lot more options.
Yeah, and I've even partnered with a couple other coaches, one who's a copywriting expert and one who's a money mindset expert.
Right.
And so we kind of, you know, tag team working with this client. We've got it set up. I do a call, they do a call, and does a call. And we're actually going to start actually doing some of them together. So we make sure that everybody's in sync. But just, I don't want to be a copywriting expert. That's not, you know, if you want a copywriter, watch next week's call, right? That's not my cup of tea. But conversations, that's where I live.
Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
So Jeremy D, something you said a moment ago made me think of another idea that I've seen from another trainer, which was the first sale you have to make as a salesperson is to yourself. Does that match up with what you're thinking? And if so, would you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a caveat though. You know, I see a lot of people talk about you need to drink the Kool-Aid, right? You need to believe in your own product. And so in my previous lives, I sold life insurance for a while. Well, one of the requirements was I actually had to buy it myself.
Yep.
And I worked at a bank. Well, I had to be the bank's customer first, right? And that just gives a much better experience or story, because stories sell.
Yeah.
And if you're not bought in, you know, at least on the emotional level, you don't necessarily have to buy the product, I don't think, in all cases, although it will add 10 or 20% to your conversion as soon as you actually own the product you're selling. I can almost guarantee that. But you do at least have to have that level of commitment that you would buy if that product was right for you.
Yeah.
Good deal. Good deal. So that kind of gets us into the field of limiting beliefs. And I know I went to your website, I had a look around. One of the first things that you say you help people deal with are limiting beliefs, right? So what are some of the limiting beliefs that you've commonly found that block people from like achieving their potential as salespeople?
One is sales is a bad word.
No.
Sale might be a 4-letter word, but it's not a bad 4-letter word. And it, as I mentioned earlier, it's really just giving your knowledge and insight to somebody who doesn't have it to help them make a better decision is really how I would position it. But the other one that's really, really common, especially where I work with a lot of business owners and coaches, is there's this crazy misconception that there's some kind of inverse correlation with the price that you charge and the value that somebody gets. So if you charge up here, well, that's somehow going to bring down the value. And the reality is it's the opposite.
Yeah.
In my experience, the level of investment, especially with something like a coaching program or something that requires work from the
Participation. Yep.
Yeah. The higher level of the investment, the higher level of commitment the person has to achieving the result.
I don't hear a lot of people talk about that the way you just did. I really like that. I've always thought about that as pie. And so when you're charging, the way people think about it is, when I charge more, I'm capturing more of the pie, and so there's less pie left over for the client for them to be super happy about it. No, you're baking a bigger pie here. You really, really are. When they participate, it makes a huge difference in how willing they are to follow your instructions. It sounds trite and it sounds self-serving to say they'll value you more, they'll do better when they pay you more. But it's one of these fundamental truths that it's just absolutely vital.
I've got a story that backs it up. So the first actual coach training event that I went to was a 3-day seminar.
Yeah.
And at the time, the price that was advertised was $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I had left a corporate career, and it was literally my last $2,000. And I went, I know this is what I want to do, but I got to get my return on my investment. So I think I borrowed gas money to drive to the event. I slept on my couch, and I went in, and on day 2, the coach that was hosting it said, okay, guys, tomorrow you're going to get up on stage. You're going to do a 20-minute presentation to the group. You need to have some kind of experience built in, and you have to make an offer. And you're going to go live tomorrow. And I thought, I was terrified. Like, I had never been in front of a group other than my own previous sales teams. There was 12 people in the room, and I was scared.
Right.
And I found out later that most of the people in the room only paid $200 to be in there, not $2,000. And in the back of your mind, you might think, oh, that was not fair or whatever. But it actually changed my life, because if I'd only spent $200 to be there, I was so terrified of public speaking at the time, I would have left.
Yep.
Put it in my car. And now, when I went and I did it, I wasn't great. I was super quiet. They couldn't even hear me with a microphone. It was ridiculous.
But you got the benefit you were supposed to get.
I did, exactly. And in looking back, out of all the people that were in that room, I don't know of anyone that paid $200 is actually running a coaching business.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that difference of $1,800, I've made that back a few times over, I'll tell you.
Yep.
It completely changes how connected you are, right? That just makes the carrot bigger at the end.
Yeah.
If you ever see, you back an animal into a corner, it's going to do what it needs to get out.
Yep.
Right. I don't love that analogy, but it's the reality.
We more often talk about the other side of that. When you charge more, you as a coach or you as a service provider of whatever stripe can afford to spend more time helping that client get good results.
Right.
But you're pointing out the client side of that, and it's so much more powerful of a psychological principle than even I give it credit for most of the time. I forget this one very easily. So thank you.
We have the curse of knowledge. We're in that other role, right?
Yeah, so. and when you're comfortable, everything's working. It's all fine. But thank you for being this week's reminder on that principle. It's so very important. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still rolling around in my head about it from the customer's point of view, because everybody thinks they want a deal. And I talk about it again from the coach's perspective of you can't get poor enough to help a broke customer.
Yeah,
you can't discount enough to help somebody, right? This is great to hear from the customer side of things. That no, actually, I didn't feel ripped off. Right? When you discovered the $200 price tag that everyone else had paid, and you were able to leverage off that or push off that $2,000 price tag to do something else.
Yeah, and even like later on in my coaching career, working with that same coach, actually a year and a half later or so, I was in a situation where I had people booking strategy sessions with me, and they just weren't converting. I was having one of those mindset moments where I'm like, kicking myself, right? I'm like, I can't close these guys. How can I be the sales strategist? All over my head. And my coach said, are they really qualified? And I said, well, they invested for the session. He said, well, but are they really qualified? Like, did you take the time to qualify the person? And I thought about it. And in that case, I really hadn't. And he said, okay, it's time to raise the bar. I want you to go and charge what you should be charging, not this piddly amount. Another issue that happened with the rate that I had been charging, which wasn't insignificant, but there had been 2 people that had signed up as clients, and after 3 months, they weren't getting results. And it was because there was one action that they wouldn't take. I gave them alternatives. They still wouldn't do those. And I thought, well, this isn't enough to make them move.
Yeah.
But I was nervous. And my coach said, look, just do it. And so he said, create a 1-year program.
Yep.
And out of nowhere, as soon as I mentally committed to doing it, someone sent me a message on my website. Actually sent me an email because for some reason the contact form was broken on my website. So they were really interested in getting to know me and had heard me interviewed on a couple podcasts. And at the end of the conversation, I quoted almost twice as high as I normally did on a monthly basis, but I quoted based on the entire year.
Right.
This is a big shift. And I remember just everything that I teach everybody else, I'm playing it through my head. And I remember it was over video chat. And I remember staring into the camera like this, just going.
Trying not to have too much of a grimace on your face while you wait.
It was more like, it was like, I was kind of freaking out. I asked for the investment and I said, the investment is, and then I just shut up. And I just stared straight. Because I teach people that the first person to break the silence, I don't like the way this is worded, but the first person to break the silence is the one that gets sold.
Sure.
And so I just sat there and it felt like 3 hours, but it was like 2.5 minutes. And just going on through his head. And he came back and said, if I paid for 8 months up front, would I get a discount? Like, okay. And so that's a really neat story. But the even cooler part is that when I met that gentleman, he had no business. He didn't like his corporate life and wanted to change. And went from 0 business to 6 figures in 6 months.
Right.
And so that's not even about the results that I get. That's the type of person. He was motivated. He was driven. He was an action taker.
Yep.
Those people that were paying almost half the price just weren't.
Yep.
And it's okay. If any of them are listening to this, you just weren't there yet, and that's fine. But the people
timing is everything in life.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so it's a game changer. So you get someone that's ready to play at a different level.
Yeah, pricing as a qualifying tool.
Yeah,
there's a lot of power there too. Yeah, cool.
So you help people with their marketing strategy as well?
I do a little bit of marketing as well. Yeah.
What is the #1 mistake that you see most coaches and entrepreneurs making when they design their marketing strategy?
Not planning it out properly.
Amen.
I think that the biggest challenge is that people don't take the time to think about where the client or the prospect is. Like, where are they in their head? So we see, like, in the online marketing space, for example, you see, download the free gift. And then it's, this is the point where they're most likely to buy again. So let's stick a $7 offer on the page. And that stuff is great. But if you don't think about exactly what the person's mindset is, then you're not going to make an offer that's appropriate. Like if I say, download my, 5 seasons successful sales conversations, for example, and then on the next page, I say, click to buy this in-depth Facebook ad training. Like, there's a lot of gaps between those two, right? And so you need to make it make sense. And so they don't think about it. And the other part is that, and this is the biggest thing, is they don't fund the traffic at a level that's high enough to actually get the results. Like, I've seen people hold webinars and they go, I didn't make any sales, or I made 1 sale. Oh my goodness, I wasted my time, I wasted my money. Then we go back.
How many attendees did you have?
Exactly,
how much did you pay per attendee? Yeah. Oh, well, I had 4 people on the webinar live, and only 1 of them bought. Okay.
And so
I take those for the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I take those situations and say, okay, let's look at the numbers, and then I give them a big congratulations for what they really did, because 1 out of 4, that's a 25% conversion rate, and that is insane for a webinar. Now, the sample size isn't large enough to.
It's not real statistics, but sure, yeah.
But like, they should
feel bad about it either.
No, right? Exactly. And then we go back and say, okay, what spot did the ball get dropped? Right? Is it the attendees? Did you get your 20 to 30% show up rate?
Yes.
And that's where things like your email sequences and messenger bots and things like that can be really, really helpful, right?
I'd like to make a point for the audience here on this one, that when we're talking about not putting enough into ad spend or not doing enough paid traffic, the exact same thing applies if you're putting your time into it instead of money. Your business has to pay you. That's where your money comes from, to pay your own bills. So your time equals money. We think of that as exactly the same thing. So when that's something where we're starting to really pay attention is everybody says for a podcast, for instance, spend 20% of the time making the podcast or making the marketing material, creating, and then 80% of your time promoting whatever material you've created.
Yeah.
And the same goes for webinars. So spend 80% of your energy on the promotion of that thing and getting people to it rather than the thing itself. It's counterintuitive, but it holds true really strongly in a lot of different ways across a lot of marketing things.
Absolutely. And there's a program that I'm in that's designed to help you increase your productivity, because ultimately that's the name of the game for an entrepreneur.
Yeah, the production rate, right?
Yeah, and one of the unique things that's used in the program is called the entrepreneurial scorecard. And so it forces you to associate a dollar value to the activities you're doing.
Oh, I like it. That's cool.
And so what's really interesting, and I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but as far as the value for the growth of your business and the sustainability of it, the value for doing a sales call, I believe, is 5 times the value of servicing an existing client.
Yeah.
And
as far as dollar per hour rate,
yeah, because that's what's going to grow, get you that ultimate revenue goal, right? And so it doesn't necessarily mean that serving a client isn't as valuable, but if your focus is sales and marketing, you need to go market and sell. Right?
Weird.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I did 6 years of funnel consultation calls, and that was the #1 problem that kept coming up. I'd work through their numbers. They never would have done it before, and not enough traffic was always the problem.
And it was a shocker to them too.
Yeah, they couldn't. They were beaten before they started on achieving their revenue goals, which were usually probably pretty vague too. But I want to make $10,000 a month. Okay, well, we back out, and you got literally like 1/10 of the traffic that you needed.
Well, that's it, right? People don't realize, even based on the standards in the online marketing industry or coaching industry, that you need a lot of traffic. You're working back 10% close, 30% show rate. You need
by the time you get done with the funnel, if you're looking at a 3.5% opt-in to sale rate, 3.5%, that's good. That means on the phone you're probably closing at 30%, 40% maybe, unless you have every step before that just totally dialed in, and then you can drop down to a 15 or 20% close rate and still get that. But I mean, that's doing pretty good on every step of the funnel will only get you about a 3.5% close rate on that on an evergreen webinar style funnel.
And so that actually, again, supports why charging higher prices is more effective, right? You don't need 10,000 clients to grow your business. You just need 10 really well invested clients.
Yep.
The rates are it. So
figure out how you can help someone more completely, provide them more value so that you can charge them more and not worry about instead of only spending 80% of your time promoting, if your prices are too low, you're going to spend 96% of your time promoting and you're going to fall down on the fulfillment.
Well, that's it. Well, it's interesting. One of my clients, some of the programs that they've designed are under the consultation of Frank Bria, and he just says, what's your 6-figure problem that you solve?
Exactly. That's a great succinct way of asking that question. I love that. What's your 6-figure problem? I'm going to start asking that. I like that.
So you may have, I'm interested because you may have already answered this question with something that we've said. What do you believe most salespeople and business owners need to change their mindset about regarding sales? Where's the biggest problem?
Actually, you know what? So I haven't mentioned this because I'm probably not going to give you the answer you're looking for. Sales, the sales process is not actually about making the sale, because you can't control the result of the end of that conversation.
Yes,
agreed.
Okay. Yep.
It's about the activity. So I've worked with clients. I've actually gone in and consulted in businesses, and we just like the funnel, we mapped it back. But if you're doing sales calls, well, how many calls do you need to get an appointment? Or even if you're cold calling, how many dials do you need to get someone to speak to you? How many people to speak to you do you need to get an appointment? How many appointments do you need to close a sale?
Right.
And you need to work it back because you don't know. And then, in our cases, it might be we do a consultation and it's just not the right fit. Whether we decided or they decided, it doesn't matter. The ultimate result is we're not going to sign someone up if we know they're not a good fit just because we want to increase our perceived conversion rate, right?
Yep.
All we can do is get in front of as many of our ideal clients as possible and then try to solve their problems. And so if we're doing that, it's going to ultimately give us the result if we do the activities long enough that we have accurate stats to go back on.
Okay, so that makes sense. So focus on the activities, which you can control your own behaviors. Because let's say I am making outbound cold calls. I can't control whether they answer the phone. I can't control whether they can talk right now. I can't control whether they're interested in what I have to ask about, right?
Exactly.
And I can't control whether they're qualified.
Right.
And I can't control whether they're ready to buy right now or not. There's so
and
many things there. And if you contort yourself and get all beat up on any of those things, you're just hurting yourself.
Well, that's it. I mean, you can influence them. Like if they're not answering during the day, try them in the evening or the weekend, right? But you're right. Ultimately, you can't control any of those pieces. So it's just, it becomes a contact sport, as I was once told, right? The more contacts you make, the better you do in the sport.
Okay.
I like that.
Let's talk about trust with the target market for a minute here. How do you teach your clients to create trust with their target market? I guess in general for the target market and then with individual prospects.
So I think if we go back to the first of the conversation we had, it's really about asking questions to find out what they really want. So I think far too often, like we see people that have specific products and programs, and that's great. But their marketing, there's no way to make it focused. They're saying, this is the program and you need it if you're this, this, and this. But when you're having a sales conversation, you've got the opportunity to not have to assume what somebody's thinking. You can just ask. So if you can just say, tell me what's important to you. Or there was a close that I got from another gentleman, and I believe he's kind of in the sales coaching space as well. And he was pitching me. And he said to me, he says, so what would you like to happen next? And I went, oh, that's good. And it's,
you're solid. We can work together somehow or some way.
Exactly. And, and even though I didn't end up purchasing from him, I thought about it. Well, I think I actually used the line last week. So it's a really nice way to ask for the sale without having to feel like you're going for the jugular, right? Like, sales,
that's one of my favorites, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I just find it really, it just makes it a big difference. And the other piece is, back in the day, I worked in a call center, feels like 4 lives ago.
I've done that too, yeah.
And, it was all about the close-ended questions, right? Are you happy with your service? Have you been looking at other competitors? And you just want them, wouldn't it be nice to save some money? Wouldn't it be nice to have that extra money at the end of the year to go on a vacation? And it's just get them to say yes, And then you're going to pitch them something and they may not buy. And that was okay when it was a beep in your ear and you were, pushing buttons on the computer. But when you're closing sales that are 5 and 6 figures, you need to have an actual conversation. And one of the things that I try to avoid is trying to steer the call too much. Eventually I do try to bring it back to see if I think that I can solve their problem,
right?
Then I get them back there.
Yeah.
But I often just let them kind of go down the road that they need to go down, and I dig deeper. And one of the things that I've learned in my career is trying to dig 6 layers deep. It's like peeling the layers off the onion, right?
Yep.
Why is that important to you? Why does that matter?
Yep.
What's the importance of that? And you get to have some really in-depth conversations with people.
Yeah. The only hard part is figuring out how to ask that question 6 different ways without sounding boring.
Yeah.
Or making them think they didn't answer your question properly and making them defensive. So just have a few different ways to ask the question and you're golden on that.
Yeah, exactly. And so it just takes you to such a deep place. And in the company that I worked for that I learned it, I remember the first person that I enrolled in that particular program, she was a nurse, and she reached out to me like 3 months later, and she said, I need to leave my husband, and you're the only person I trust to tell. And I was like, hold on, I'm the only person that you trust to tell this very personal thing to. And it wasn't like she was flirting with me or anything. It was just, I was the only one she trusted.
Right.
That came from, and I think that was my first conversation with that person. it was probably 4 hours. Like I went way too long, but
Sure.
but the amount of relationship that was built, like we can't take that for granted.
Right.
You know, I like to say that sales is like a superpower, but with great power comes great responsibility. And so when you can speak to people and connect with them like that, you have that responsibility to help them make the best decision for them, even if it doesn't include you or whatever you're selling.
Yeah. Yeah. When you try and use that low ticket approach, the call center approach on a high ticket call, and there aren't a whole lot of people that are gonna have both of those experiences that we've had there,
Right.
but the closed-ended questions, and I would broaden that a little bit to say manipulative questions and techniques and any kind of pushy stuff. When I hear that on a call, I just go, do you want refunds? This is how you get refunds. I mean, that's it right there. If they're qualified, then you've done your job at the beginning, and now you can just build desire with them and follow them down their path for where they want to go and see, can I help get them there? And if you really can't, then don't try. If that's not where you're headed, don't tell them you're going that way.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we covered sales process a little bit here. What don't you like to see in somebody's sales process when they come to you?
Yeah, we know one of them.
Well, I think the thing I don't like to see in a sales process is, actually, this is a huge one, is people trying to delegate the sales process to somebody else before they're ready. And I don't know, you guys see this too, right?
Yep.
People, like I've had people come to me and say, hey, can you do my sales calls?
Yep.
And initially I was inexperienced in that particular scenario.
Sure.
And I said, sure. And I've had times when there was 0 conversions, but it was because the funnel wasn't set up. I hadn't gone through the process. One of the rules that I implemented fairly quickly afterwards is I need to have access to the program I'm selling.
Yep.
So I can talk about it.
That was one of our first rules too. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's crazy how much of a difference it makes.
Yeah.
But also you need to make sure that it's converting. So if somebody says, I've got a webinar and I'm going to send them to a strategy session, do you want to be my guy that does that? Not anymore. Because I need to make sure, and you can't train me on the flow if you've never done it.
Right.
Actually, this is a conversation that Jeremy, you and I had to quite some length a few months ago, right?
Yeah.
It's such an issue, and I think there's places in your sales process that you can delegate to technology, and there's certain pieces like a qualifying component maybe that you can delegate to somebody else.
Yep.
But that true sales conversation, especially a big ticket one, people want to connect with you. There's actually one of my other clients that I'm working with. The process was just send them right to me, and some of the programs are $100,000. And I thought, okay, it's not going to happen the first call, but it was a pretty significant process that they went through up to that point. So they were very comfortable with the program and the authority and all that.
Right.
But we still found that at that level of a decision, they didn't know who I was. My name was mentioned in the webinar, but they had to be able to have that conversation. And as soon as we made that shift to, I became the qualifier, and we booked the call with the actual expert that was going to be running the program. I think we went like, the close rate was 2 out of 2 for the very next webinar we did. And we're still waiting for ones to come in. So that's what's happened this week, right? Like 2 calls, 2 calls closed, and all it was making sure that we had the right level of trust, to Jason's point earlier, at the proper points.
Yeah.
Huge difference. Before I was going 3 months trying to close them, right? And now it was like 3 days. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. This is actually why we developed our sales call overhaul product in the first place, was for people who didn't understand the sales process enough to manage it even. And so you need to get decent at it before it may not be for you long term. Maybe you're not a salesperson overall, like John Paramore says the other week. Maybe it's not in your DNA. Okay, you can do it, but it's not your passion. All right, that's fine. That's no problem. But just keep in mind, you're going to make huge mistakes if you don't know what's happening. So if you have an expert to guide you through that process and you are trusting them 100% to manage it, and you follow their instructions with the funnel and everything, it all has to be so tightly integrated. And that cannot happen if you don't know and trust that you know what's going on. If you don't trust yourself in that, you're going to be looking for a white knight or for a messiah. We call it messiah syndrome.
Yeah.
And so messiah syndrome clients never work. They're always miserable for the provider, and they always end badly for the client.
And this is an analogy that I don't think people make, but I found myself here on the flip side of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when an entrepreneur hires their first virtual assistant.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Now, I don't want to say and salespeople are very different than virtual assistants, but the concept from the entrepreneur perspective.
Employees in general. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's the process is the same. You can't think, and I did this, I made this mistake. I brought somebody on and I didn't take the time to train. I thought, oh, you've done this before. Great. Here's access to my Facebook group. Go work your magic. Right. And I'm looking back and go, wow, if I did that with a salesperson, or if I saw a client do that with a salesperson, I'd be having a serious conversation with them. So, it's the same kind of idea. It doesn't matter what the role is. They need to be trained. They need to get attention. And with a salesperson or VA or anyone else you add to your team, it's like an investment over time, right? 6 months from now, you want them to be rock stars, and they can be. But you have to make sure you mold them that way right now.
Yeah, if you're doing the management, it's going to take a while. There's a video in our group from earlier today, as a matter of fact, in the Sales Call Overhaul Facebook group, that is all about how to structure your hiring so that you don't run into that kind of problem. Nice. It's from Lynn Swayze. So look, you will like that video.
Check it out. Yeah, for sure.
If you're into that kind of topic, you will like that video from her, and she's going to be doing a whole series inside the group there.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Yeah, it happens with so many different types of providers, but especially the ones where it's a high skill level. There's so much trust that has to happen there, and it has to be justified. It has to be deserved trust. It can't be blind trust. And so figuring out how to create all of that in the relationship is just as important as creating the structure around it to enable the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that with the sales process, you're going to have people come back to you like they didn't close the sale, and it's because they didn't know how to handle a specific objection. And if you, as the coach or the entrepreneur or expert, you don't know how to answer because you've never got that objection before, like you need to have that experience. It's the same like when you're starting a coaching business. A lot of people encourage you to do a lot of one-on-one first to get a feel for where your sweet spot is. And I totally agree. Like, you need to be in the trenches, having those conversations, identifying those objections, so that you can either package your programs to work with them. Like, how many programs have we seen with bonus after bonus after bonus? And it's because those are the weak spots or the challenges or resistance that their audience has, right?
Yeah,
you got to know that firsthand.
Let's hop back to the same question that John Paramore answered there. When do you know someone just isn't going to make it in sales despite like their best intentions, your best intentions? It's just a train wreck.
I'm a hopeless optimist. So I tend to go a little bit longer. However,
I have trouble with that too. Yeah.
When I do hold on, I actually tend to, it ends up working out. So I haven't found enough data to make me stop being an optimist. But I think the point comes in when the person just doesn't care. If I'm trying and they're trying, it can be done. Actually, one of my first roles back in the call center, it was actually a coach for people that were on their way out. And it was, okay, these people have struggled. They've got third and final warning for performance.
Yeah.
You and the rest of the team go back and fix it. And it came down to, are you willing to, are you coachable, I guess, is the ultimate.
That's a pretty clear condition.
Yeah.
That's a pretty solid condition. Yeah.
Ooh.
Cool.
So we have an audience question here. Thank you.
And our producer.
Thank you. So how often do you go back and recreate the package after you've already started? Like you've realized, okay, this is not working. This needs some tweaks. This needs a total redo. Because we've had that happen a couple times with us, and I imagine a lot of salespeople have had that happen with them too.
Yeah, and truthfully, it's most of the time because
Really?
yeah. Okay. And part of it is because, again, if we go back to not putting yourself in the mindset of the customer, you think, okay, I've made this product, I think it's great. Well, one, did you validate it with an audience?
Yeah.
Right? If we're talking about like expert and coaching programs, for example, did you validate it? And also, if you're selling in a non-sales conversation component or process, you need to have other pieces to help psychologically bring people to the point where they see the increased value. If you're going through if it's through a sales conversation, you can normally talk around the concerns and help ease them. In that case, you might not have to shift the package, but even when I've worked with companies that have actual physical products, there's ways that we can shift it, even if it's adjusting the presentation of it, because this feature is really powerful and it's not being highlighted. Right? So either the offer or the presentation of the offer gets shifted most of the time.
With the presentation of the offer, I'd say most of the time we end up shifting something with them as well. We've been kind of surprised at how often our clients are asking us for advice on the funnels. Like, okay, we'll help out and it's all more money, but this is not what we planned on doing. So we've kind of learned to expect that now, but that was a shocker at first. Like, we thought you had all this ready. No, they don't. They really don't. Okay, fine.
Speaking of not having things ready.
Uh-oh. What have I done now?
Imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
So let's assume you encounter imposter syndrome in a client. Do you find that that's a mask for low money tolerance, meaning like a discomfort with charging high prices?
Not always. Sometimes it is, but I think it's actually more of a challenge that they're dealing with their own personal value or self-worth. So when I started, I was the same way. I could sell someone else's product as long as I believed in it. But when I started promoting my own product, actually my first program that I created, it was an outline on a web page and sat there with no traffic to it for probably 8 months until I was at a live event and someone said, you need something to pitch here. And I went, I'll pitch that. Right. And so it was because it was up there. I thought, what if I put myself out there? What if people know that part of this was learning that I did and I haven't, lived it all? And the reality is, if you can help somebody, if you're 1 or 2 steps ahead,
that's what they want. Right?
And so they don't want someone that's been doing this for 30 years and forgot how rough it was when you started, right? Most people don't want that. So I think they don't want it because they don't believe they can be helped by that person anymore. Exactly. As long as you can help them and they believe you can help them, you're golden. Yeah, exactly. That's the big caveat there. And actually, there's a really good distinction. So I think the imposter syndrome, like it's just nervousness about can I follow through? Can I deliver? Or I think I can deliver, but what if I don't? And that comes down to the fear of rejection, which is the core of why a lot of people resist sales. Right?
It's why a lot of salespeople resist follow-up as well.
That's true.
They've already rejected me once. What if they reject me again?
Come
on. It's CPR. They're dead already. See if you can bring them back to life.
It's interesting. I was one of the previous lives that I was in. There was a woman, and they were inbound leads, but they weren't specific to our company, but they were specific to our industry. So we were buying leads. And so she had inquired about this particular general topic. And I was following, and we had a strategy where it was you dial once and don't leave a message, and then 3 hours later you dial again and leave a message. If you can't get a hold of them the next day, call again. I think it was leave a message the second day, and then call again the following 3 days with no messages, just try to get them live on the phone. And I kept following up, and then I finally got a hold of her, and I was like, oh, she picked up. What's gonna happen? She said, thank you for being so persistent, and she signed up. And that was a $30,000 program. But if we don't give them a chance, and this is a big piece that I think gets overlooked a lot is people are nervous, pitching high ticket items, and they're nervous about asking for the sale. But what we do, because we're scared, we act selfishly and we don't give that person the option. So we like to, and we get in our heads and it's like the worst possible scenario, like, the person's been hanging up on us every time we dial. That's not what happens.
Yep.
Right? People are busy. How many times have you looked at your phone in the last week and went, ignore, I'll call them back, and you just don't, right? You're not being malicious about it. You're being...
I could not count on both hands the number of decently priced or expensive things that I have bought because the salesperson was persistent. And I was busy. I missed them. I was busy. It was a bad time. They persisted. Okay, let's do it.
You know, the first...
And there was almost no feeling in it for me at all. I didn't have any feelings toward the salesperson, except by the time it was ready, I was like, oh, I'm glad they stuck around.
Mm-hmm.
It was very mild the whole way through from the prospect side.
Yeah.
And similarly from the salesperson side, you don't notice it as much, but that's what's going on most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we just need to take ourselves out of it, right? It's trust the system. Yep. And because if we don't, like I said, we're being selfish. Our fear of rejection is stopping us from helping somebody. And if you have a product or a service that can have a high impact for somebody, it's our responsibility to help get them there and at least let them make the decision. They don't have to say yes.
Yeah.
But we at least have to give them the opportunity.
Right. Well, cool.
Awesome. Well, you've got a link that you have set up, Jeremy, for our viewers. Anybody watching can go to
Thank you.
the URL and get something for free from you. So describe that for us, please.
Yeah. So what I've put together, we talked about going that 6 layers deep in the conversation and how tough it can be and what language you can use. Well, I put together, it's a PDF. I think it's 4 pages, and it's called the 5 C's of Successful Sales Conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And so it takes you step by step through how to have those big ticket sales conversations and how to create a connection so strong that, like that example I gave when the woman came back and told me I was the only one she would trust to give that personal information. You can create that level of trust with people. And there's just a few simple steps, but it's really, really powerful. And this is the same process that my clients will put up on the wall beside their computer and will close $10,000 clients.
Right.
Right. So for your audience, I want to make this available for free. The link is permissiontosell.com/sales call overhaul.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And it's helped so many people that I want to keep it going, right? Because this is the piece I think is missing. It's a step-by-step guide to get to the point where you're ready to close.
Yep.
And I just think there's so much power and it'll empower other people to change so many lives because of their ability to build that connection. So
agreed. And that really is the kind of thing that you have to put on the wall, because it's not that it's hard to do. It's not that it's super complex. It's that there's an emotional block to going that deep with people. Yep. And so you have to trust the system, like you said. You have to have a good system that works, and this does work. It always works. People let you go so much deeper than you think they're going to let you go. Don't chicken out on this stuff. Remind yourself of it. Put it on your wall. So everybody head over to permissiontosell.com/sales call overhaul to get this PDF work.
Cheat sheet? I'll call it a cheat sheet.
Sure, cheat sheet. I like that. Okay, very cool. Thank you so much, Jeremy. This has been a pleasure.
Right.
And everybody who has been listening and watching, thank you for being here with us. And as always, we have changed where to go to submit a sales call overhaul to have your own sales call overhaul taken care of for you. So now the best place to go is facebook.com/sales call overhaul, and just message our page. And you too can win the $1,100 sales call overhaul package, where we will transcribe your entire call. We'll timestamp it. We'll give you detailed notes on everything going on with that call, all the dynamics going on there, what needs to change to boost your close rate immediately, your 3 key areas of fastest, highest leverage. We'll grade the call on 9 different scales. we'll package it all up and send it back to you like a reference manual for your future calls. We want you to be able to boost your close rate immediately. And at some point during your sales career, more sales training is not what you need. You need feedback on what you're doing. And so that's why we have on sales coaches rather than people who just sell an info product. Here's how to sell, or who just have a book or something like that. Yes, there's lots of great books out there. We use them, etc. But you need that feedback. You need to be in a long-term program, but this can get you started. And then we can point you to great sales coaches like Jeremy when you're ready to be coached on a big basis, when you're really needing to get that going in a big way. So head over to our Facebook page and let's see, facebook.com/salescalloverhaul, and just message our page to get that. And Jeremy, I would love to have you back. And I'm not putting him on the spot, everybody. He's already agreed, so I'm just letting you know about this. But I'm excited to have you back fairly soon to do a sales call overhaul with us.
I would love it. And for anyone listening, about your sales call overhaul, if you're someone that is doing the sales and your long-term vision isn't to be doing the sales in your business, this is the first step to mapping out the process to pass on to your next salesperson.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Definitely message the page.
Yeah. It needs to be a process. Yeah.
That's right.
And if you're not a salesperson, you're going to have trouble teaching that. If you're not a teacher, you're going to have trouble teaching that. So turn it into a teachable tool so that you can get out of it, even if it's not your passion. Yeah. We've never used that as a selling point before, and I absolutely love it. Thank you, Jeremy.
My pleasure.
And thank you for being here. Remember, everybody, Jeremy's website is permissiontosell.com/salescalloverhaul to get your free cheat sheet. And that's it for me. Jason, what am I forgetting here?
I was going to talk us out, but you did it. So
go for it.
Thanks to our producer, Emson, for doing the thing.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week.